Well, thank you, Rozlyn, for being here with me today. And it's a pleasure to talk to you about this experience that you've been having learning Spanish. But to start, let's talk a little bit about you. Can you tell us about yourself, about your experience? Where do you live? And
Yeah, so I live in the United States, and I live in Montana, and what I guess the thing is I studied Spanish in high school so many years ago, but then my mother moved to Costa Rica, and when I visited her, every once in a while, one of the words that I learned from high school would pop out. I would remember one word, but a couple summers ago, my mom passed away. And when that happened, my sister and I was an emergency. It was a tragedy, and we went to Costa Rica. And what I guess what I could say is my mom's legacy was more than the house that she had in Costa Rica. It was the people and the community that she had built. And when my sister and I experienced that community, it was there was no we wanted to stay in touch, and so we decided to keep the house and to spend more time in Costa Rica because of the people. And because of that, I felt like it was extremely important for me to learn Spanish, not because I wasn't able to manage getting around Costa Rica with my Google Translate, but because I really feel like if I'm going to spend time in a Spanish speaking country, that it's my responsibility to be able to speak Spanish, and not everyone in Costa Rica can speak English. So I just felt like that was really important. And I also feel like it's just an important way to also experience the culture,
I
if that
understand.
makes sense.
Yes, yes, of course. And it's amazing how you took, something. Well, first, I'm sorry for your loss. It's terrible. But you took something sad, right? And you use it as motivation, right? It's beautiful. Yes. Do you feel that that is what motivates you the most when you're learning Spanish, right? Because we all know learning another language can be challenging.
hmm I think so. I think that that is one of the things that motivates me most. And when I visit Costa Rica, there are more and more people that I meet that are exclusively Spanish speaking people that I want to know. And so I feel like that's what I need to do to get to know them a little bit better and understand and the differences in our culture and everything like that. Um,
Mhm.
But yeah, I think honestly, yeah, because nobody, where I live, no one really, there's not very many people that speak Spanish, so there's no real reason to do so.
Yes, yes, of course. So, in this time that you have been learning Spanish and traveling to other countries, especially Costa Rica, what challenges do you feel you have overcome?
One of my first challenges was, of course, the airport. And just
Hmm.
getting through the airport, and everybody was very nice, but not everybody was Spanish speaking. And, it's stressful when you're going through customs. And so being able to understand a little bit of Spanish, I can at least let people know how much I know and how much I can understand, and it helps me navigate through that. And I would say the other area that has been particularly helpful in Costa Rica is at the grocery store.
Why?
So there's a difference in the products that are there, right? So it's different than what we see in our home country, and it just to be able to even if I don't know the word of it and I look it up in Google Translate, I can formulate a sentence that
Mhm.
makes sense to ask, so do you have, or where would I find, or what is the best, or what do you recommend, those kind of things. And I feel like being able to have that communication, particularly in what do you recommend, I think that's a really important thing, because you can learn a lot more and you can get better stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but it
Yeah.
helps a whole lot to be able to ask questions.
Right, right. And it feels like you connect better with people, right? That at
Yes.
least they see that you're trying, and yeah, of
That's
course.
exactly right. Because I do think that even though I have a lot to learn, um, people appreciate, I think Spanish speaking people appreciate that I'm trying. And I've noticed that because they've noticed. So over the course of the last year and a half, I've gone back to Costa Rica and I've been complimented by bank tellers on my improvement. And they're always friendly. Everyone has always been very friendly, but I feel like there's a little bit more warmth and even like some excitement in the fact that I care enough about learning Spanish to communicate with them. They appreciate it, and I get the sense that they appreciate that about me.
Yes, of course, of course. How do you feel your life changed since you started learning Spanish? How do you feel, you change, right? Because it's not just life that changes, but we as human beings, I feel that when we start learning another language, something changes, like the world expands, right? So how do you feel your life has changed in the last, months and years that you've been learning Spanish?
I feel like for one for one thing, I'm more aware when I hear Spanish words, and I'm more like tuned in. Um, but even more so, I think that my interest in Spanish speaking culture has increased, because I feel like there's a lot that we can learn about the way other people live and what makes other people happy. And so I think that my interest has just really um, grown in trying to understand those things. And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. But if I were to tie it back to language or learning language, and I don't even know if it ties back to it, but when you start, why are the pronouns here? Or why are we speaking, what priority we're putting words in? It sort of makes this connection of like, well, does that connect with the culture in some way? And if so, how does that connect with the culture? And how do people benefit? What makes them happy, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, of course. It changes, right? I
Mm-hmm.
see it with the students, with the people, not just Spanish, but any language in particular. And that happened to me when I was learning English. It's like traveling, right? Same
Mm-hmm.
feeling. When you travel, your vision expands, and then you get to know other cultures. It's the same with language. Happens the same. You see how other people think, their culture, and language is so tied to that, how people think. So I think, yes, not just Spanish, but learning other language changes so much our lives. Yes,
Yeah.
very good. Okay. And how do you feel the classes specifically, have impacted your learning, so far? How do you think that has helped you?
I I don't know if I would definitely not be as successful as I am if it wasn't for the classes, particularly because I live in Montana. But even if I lived in Costa Rica, it is really awesome to be able to practice that conversation, because even when you have the opportunity to speak and to practice, it's still kind of confusing, I think, sometimes when we try to use our Spanish words. It's not, it doesn't always come out right. And so it can be a little bit hard and a little bit frustrating. And so the default is always to go to the easy. Okay, well, I want coffee. So cafe, I mean, I don't want to go any further than that. I know what coffee means. I don't want to try to put a sentence together. And so I think that just having that opportunity to work with somebody that understands, that helps me put my sentences together, is like invaluable. I would not be able to get that in through anything else. I mean, there's no replacement for that.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm glad that that has helped you a lot. That's the goal, right?
Right? Right?
Yes. Very good. Well, you shared before about benefits that you have by learning Spanish in the stores and things like that. But can you share with me what other achievements you have in this time learning Spanish? I think that will be interesting for many people.
Okay, so I don't know if you can call this an achievement, but I think so. I have Spanish speaking friends now. Then they only speak Spanish. And I can't understand everything they say, and they can't understand everything that I say. But I can still go for a walk, for example, with someone from Costa Rica and that speaks Spanish, and I can understand enough for them to walk along the path and point over here and over there and say this is that and this is, and I think that that to me is one of the biggest achievements, because it's about community. Like, that's what drew us to Costa Rica. That's why my sister and I are in love with the idea of like staying connected with that community, because it's unlike most, many communities that, you come across. And so to be able to see things from that perspective, to be able to walk along the road and to see things from someone who is from Costa Rica, the way that they see things is to me a pretty big achievement.
Of course, yes, being able to make friends from other cultures with a different
Mm-hmm.
language, of course,
Yep.
yes. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. If somebody that is watching us maybe is thinking about learning Spanish, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be to don't give up. The process is incremental, is the word that I use, because it's not an overnight transformation. And as Chelsea knows, some days I'm like, damn, I'm on it. But then other days I'm like, I got no Spanish words. and but it doesn't mean that I'm not learning. It's just sometimes those situations, and it feels frustrating. So just because you have sort of like an experience and you're frustrated and it didn't go as well as you did, just keep going, keep pushing forward, keep trying, keep learning, keep practicing, keep saying things out loud, and you will make progress.
Yes, yes, of course. And I think all the learning, not only languages, but anything that you're learning is not a straight line, right? It goes up and
Mm-hmm.
down. And there are some days, depending on how we're feeling, if we are tired, depending what's going on in our lives, right? That it will make it easier that day to speak and to try and make the effort. And some days it's not like that, right? We don't feel with the same
Yeah.
energy, and our brain can feel that, and then it's a little bit difficult to
Mm-hmm.
keep on with everything that we are learning. But I feel like I said is not only with languages, any type of learning that we are doing is like that, ups and downs, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the same, going into the same line, if a person is trying to learn Spanish, if they're taking classes, how would you think they can take the most out of their classes? What advice would you give them?
I guess I would say I also, do Duolingo a little bit too, to sort of keep up with my practice. And I have found that the lessons are not necessarily totally aligned, but they are kind of close. And there's a lot that I would not understand if I was only doing Duolingo if I wasn't with you, if like I wouldn't have the same sort of understanding about that. But I think that that is like having an opportunity to practice is really important. And I would say that, do your homework. But I think it's also, I go back over my homework. I mean, I'll do it like I go back and I do it again and I look at it with my new eyes from what I've learned so far. And so I think that just that repetition and like, that's a lot about what we do. I suppose it's like with habits, but I mean, even with language, I practice Spanish every single day. And I'm actually the household expert, which is really exciting because my son is taking Spanish in high school now. And so they say things really funny. And then I could be like, no, 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 no. Let me tell you the rule about where you put your emphasis in that word. And sometimes I probably am wrong, but most of the time I'm right.
See, that's great. Yeah. Well, those are really good pieces of advice. And personally, besides all of that, yeah, I think that will help people a lot. Like you said, practicing, and people can practice watching movies, listening to music, reading their favorite books, right? Sometimes my students ask, well, what books should I read in Spanish, right? Or what movies should I watch? And I will say, watch the movies and the books that you like, right? Now we have technology, which is amazing. So you can
Yeah.
translate any, you can find, any book in any language mostly, right? You can change the language of a movie. So just find the one that you really
Yep.
like, that you have already maybe watched or read before, and then do that one. And that way you're,
Yeah.
mixing things, right? Hmm.
A friend of mine suggested, and she speaks Spanish and she's done some work translating, but so she's way further ahead than I am. But what she does is she will watch a Spanish speaking movie, but she won't have English at the bottom. She'll have Spanish at the bottom because sometimes it's really hard to identify the different words. So it
Hmm.
really helps to kind of pull that out. And so that's something that I really want to try. But can I show you one more thing that I've got?
Yeah.
So this is something that I'm doing just for fun. It's like, okay, so this is Dr. Seuss.
Oh.
And then and then I showed you this one, which is really funny. And then I've got this one, which is a classic. Are You My Mom?
Eres
So
mi mamá. Always finding the things you like the most, right? to
mhm.
to
Yeah.
practice and keep you motivated, right? That's
Right.
very important. Yes. And
Yes.
my favorite thing to say is always make mistakes. That's my slogan, I think. Because the more mistakes you make when talking to people, the most you're going to get out of it, the most you're going to
Mhm.
remember the words. If you're not making mistakes, is because you're not practicing enough, right? So yes,
Right.
that's very good, very important.
Mhm.
Well, Roslyn, it was a pleasure talking to you today, and I
Thanks,
think
Chelsea.
that your insight and what your experience is going to help other people that are learning Spanish or that are thinking about learning Spanish. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Mucho gusto.